Welcome to BBC TV. Good morning, Uganda Extra. My name is Uganda Semakola Ziksoka on this 19th day of this month of February in this year 2021. Another lovely morning. Thank you so much for choosing to join and to be with us. Now, returning back from Maya Nature Resort, where the Good Morning Uganda team has been doing this program from on this particular GMU Friday. A special Ruben Impima Chiviranga and the team right now at Maya Nature Resort. Now, crossing over from Maya back to our studios here on Nile Avenue, we get to our Pan-African Talk discussion every Friday. It is our Pan-African Friday, and all the Pan-Africans out there, another very good morning. Well, in studios, as usual, and as we always the panelists here for the Pan-African Friday, Ndogo James Mututa and Cole Mande Amazima. You're all very welcome, and thank you so much for joining me.
Yes.
The discussion this morning is going to focus mainly on the relevance of the African Union, which I think is very important. But away from all that, let's first get to the week. The last time you guys were here was on Friday. In just a minute or two, every one of you take me through your past 7 days. Mututa.
It's been a nice time until something happened. You know, I been in the newsroom for a number of years, but what they call baptism of fire, when it comes to slashes, I have never, because my training was basically having been in countries like Rwanda and also in the Sudan. We have had cases where we've been bombarded from above. We have had cases when you have to dodge landmines. We have had cases when you have to survive wild animals, but not the beating.
Not the beating. Actually, not beating, batoning. Not the batoning.
So whatever happened to the journalist fraternity was very unfortunate, to say the least.
Regrettable.
And I think no apology will soothe the pain, but also the rift that seemed to be of late growing between the journalism fraternity and other people, even in countries where military is very strong, like my grandmother's called it Bama. We have had demonstrations, but journalists have not been targeted like was the case. So I think this was an isolated case, and which is regrettable. Okay. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Monday?
Well, of course, I'm not going to talk about that because
no, the week had a number of things. Talk about that. Talk about all the other things that happened.
So it is actually very regrettable. But I think also my other thing is that what I'm also seeing is that reality is dawning on President Dr. John Pombe Magufuli. That actually COVID is real.
Okay. Yes, in Tanzania.
Yeah, in Tanzania.
That's very important
because actually the death of the Vice President of Zanzibar,
the first
Vice President, yes, Hamad Saif. You know, I think it leaves the island in a very delicate situation because the Hamad, remember, was ACT was a Lendo candidate, and you know what happened during elections. The elections in Zanzibar, we had issues, and his bringing on board was the only way of. It was a handshake that was
actually he's coming as first vice president was so, intended to create the harmony.
So we wait to see. We don't want his death to break the peace that was there. Yes, because ideally, because this takes us to Zimbabwe when Joshua Nkomo died. And that was all for the Ndebele, and again the process of nationalizing Zimbabwe continued. So let's hope that this time around the people of Pemba, who are actually predominantly opposition in Zanzibar, get a replacement who actually is going to be accepted.
I think the first and most important thing is for them to accept that, yes, COVID robbed them, and they shouldn't politicize that because the first vice president died, that they should accept that, yes, there is a problem, which possibly they didn't take very serious, but that's what it is. I've also just been told that, well, now I think it's becoming mandatory for especially government officials to appear in offices, donning on masks eventually. Barikoa now is becoming another. I think they're only just realizing very late, but
yes, a little.
Yes,
too late.
So that's what is actually happening in Tanzania, and we pray for them because, well, we are brothers and sisters. What happens in Tanzania affects us in Uganda, and I think what happens in Uganda affects us in Tanzania. But I think that was also another very good observation. And of course, the Janan Luum Day that we had here, only that we normally tend to forget two very important persons when we talk about the Janan Luum Day. We normally tend to forget the IGP Erinayo, Oriema, and the minister. And the minister, Oboth Ofumbi. Who both died on the same day, or who died together on that particular day, and we leave it to their families. I was talking to the family member of both of Fumbi, and of course they are, what happens? So we know, we celebrate Janan Luum, and we forget the other person also.
But that's even when it comes to Lumumba in Congo, don't forget that he also died with yes, he died with two others, but all the time we look at...
When President Garang died, he died with many of our Ugandans, but we seem to only remember that. So that is what the irony. Now, talking about the Lumumba thing, I mean the Luum thing, something comes in my mind. You know, when one time we were in this forum in London, and someone is telling us how Indians were badly ejected from Uganda. They left their property. They lost a lot of their things. Of course, something which is unfortunate too. But then there is this one who said, "But you guys, you are talking about losing your property, women living there behind their saucepans under their brass. Ugandans paid with their blood." So you are talking about the minister, and of course there are many others who died during that struggle, and unfortunately we seem not to pay a lot of attention in the detail, which is also good so that we can forget, but maybe we don't have to completely forget, because if we completely forget, then we are likely to repeat.
Well, that's very important. Maybe running away from all that is why I think we need to remember many of these. For example, Oboth Ofumbi was an acting president for some time. When Idi Amin was moving out of the country, he actually appointed him, and I think he was an acting president for 2 or 3 days. It's in history. Just like, you remember when we lost Yoweri Wacha. When we lost Yoweri Wacha, who was one of the 3 members of the Presidential Commission, the Presidential Commission. And you know, so many Ugandans were actually just surprised that there was a Presidential Commission, and there were 3 presidents at that time. Yes, who were very ceremonial presidents at that time. But Yoweri Wacha was one of those, and you know, people just, you know, it just got to people's minds. But I think it's just important that we track, and we follow our history.
For example, in Mbale, we lost a bishop whose body has never been found, Bishop Wasike. We lost a minister who was then Minister for Public Service, and his body has never been found. And many people, Minister Waholi. And I think for us also organizing a memorial maybe before the end of the year to remember, yes, our people, who died during that.
Okay, well, thank you. So these are some of just the events, but we now get into the issues of Pan-African Friday, and to all our Pan-African friends who are actually out there. I have one of your very good followers in Masaka City, who I'm actually sure is now watching the program. He normally calls much later after the program to actually also pass on his contribution, and he actually requested me, and I think our producer will do that for us here, to find a way of engaging them on line calling, and of course hearing from them also and what they have to say. But this morning, let's get into the issues of the African Union, which has lived here for some time now, because we know that the African Union metamorphosed from the Organization of African Unity, which of course started in 1963. We know that the OAU, which eventually became the AU after that September 1999 declaration in Libya, in a place called either Sat or Sirte. Now depending on where you went to school.
On which school you went to.
But the Sat or Sirte declaration of 1999 is actually what formed the African Union. Let's talk about the relevance of the African Union, considering the issues and everything that we are actually seeing. Political integration, we have 5 blocks on the continent. We a continent that is riddled with conflicts, day in, day out, and quite a number of things. And of course, lately now, with COVID, where we did not even have a uniform approach to COVID-19. Uganda went their own way, Tanzania went their own way, every country went their own way. Egypt, where we got corona first, got their own way, and of course, a number of things. And yet again, we have this body called the African Union. I'll start with you, Ndugu, called the relevance of African Union today on the continent, so many years later.
The relevance of the African Union, I don't think is that much. And this can actually be attributed to the fact that every other time the African people try to organize, the vision bearer always is sacrificed by the particular forces that do not want the continent really to stabilize, do not want the continent to come together. In 1958, we remember Kwame Nkrumah calling the All African People's Conference in Accra, Ghana, where it was a declaration that really the independence of Ghana and Egypt is meaningless if the rest of the continent is under colonialism. So this actually led to the 1963 formation of the Organization of African Unity. But again, the intention was to expedite the unification. First of all, freeing the continent from colonialism, and then the eventual unification of the continent. 3 years down the road, in 1966, there is a coup. And when there is a coup in Ghana that actually overthrew Kwame Nkrumah, Osajefo, the other African countries looked on. We did not see that effort, say, look here, intervening, say, no, let us protect our own. Now, several years later down the road, in 1999, Gaddafi in Libya says, look here, the African Union has lost focus. I mean, the Organization of the African Unity has problems. It is constrained. Why don't we come up with a more capable and less constrained organization that is going to expedite the unification of Africa? So we find that after that declaration, in 2001, they tried to build the blocks that is in Addis Ababa, and then in 2002, in May, in Johannesburg, it was launched. We see 4 years down the road, 2 years down the road, 2004, the Pan-African Parliament is actually also constituted. So we see, but again, when Gaddafi was humiliated and overthrown, and of course killed in the manner he was, the African people, actually the continent, his fellow president just looked on. Others were even criticizing him. So now the OAU and AU have one similar situation, that the vision bearers, for the case of OAU, the vision bearer that was Nkrumah, died, and of course died with his vision. The same thing with Gaddafi, because you remember during that time, we are even told that there are some African countries that would fail to pay their subscription, because every country is supposed to subscribe to the running of the secretariat. But some countries were in areas, and Gaddafi used to pay for them. So now the vision bearer of AU is dead, and now these other people have come on board. I just see them; they're just staggering with the vision. Okay,
well, Ndugu Mtuta, let me pick your mind on the relevance of the African Union, by considering and looking at the number of things happening on the continent, the conflicts in and out, and quite a number of the different approaches, like colleagues are saying here.
The African Union is very relevant today than even ever, for the reason that if you have to build a strong African spirit, and if you have to have a very strong African bloc, Tshisekedi, when he became president, chairman of the union, was saying that he wants to make Africa a powerhouse. Of course, that's not going to be possible in his lifetime. But
In his lifetime or in his tenure?
On his life, as chairman. Yeah, because we may not make Africa today in the 1 year, and of course that's another fact that we need to look at as Africans. Is it having a president, a chairman for 1 year? Does it, like a school prefect, does it really do much given the problems that we have? And yet they are not even going to be 1 year chairperson or presidents in their home countries. Maybe we need to look at something. But getting back to the relevance, that if the African continent is to survive, we need a very strong African Union. And this union is so relevant that now Africa needs to take stock but also take control of its issues. We are looking at conflicts on the continent. We are looking at the development of the continent. We are looking at all these issues of the continent. And we are blaming the rest of the world for exploitation, for imperialism, for whatever. But what is our role as Africans? So when we are looking at the African Union, let's not look at it like there is some other body outside us, but let's look at ourselves to begin with. Because we are not going to have a better African Union without having the better countries, the internal democratic systems. Actually, there is this man, Keith, someone in his journal, when he was analyzing African Union, he was saying that African Union is actually better in its even where it is than when you look at what he called the association, the organization of the American states. They have that association, which is like bringing the Americans together. But African Union is still better. When you look at the Arab League, Africa is still better. When you look at the South Asia states, Africa still stands out. When you look at what you call the Southern market, Africa is still better. So which means if we build the structures of African Union can do a better job and can help Africa to develop. Now what is lacking in the African Union is the intervention into the issues that we have on the continent. We're having the Libyan conflict, for example. What is African Union doing? As we speak now, African Union is also claiming to have a bigger role in the issues of solving the Libyan crisis. And the Libyan crisis has to a greater extent exposed Africa as a very weak bloc. Because you are having Britain, you are having US, you are having all these powers coming together and sitting to decide. Actually, before they went for the 33rd General Summit in Ethiopia last year, they had a number of 10 meetings in Geneva. Another meeting, I think, was held in some place. Now, during this meeting, on the sidelines, and this issue comes on the sidelines, and saying, look, we need to take a very strong initiative when it comes to the issues in Libya. But the previous meetings, African Union leaders were not involved. Okay. So this when the president under Ramaphosa was then the chairman, said no. If there is anything that is to be done in Africa, then African Union must be involved. But if you are a man in a home and you begin telling your wife that before you buy a new cloth here, I need to know, it seems that there is a problem that you have not addressed. But anyway, finally they have agreed now. Actually, the resident, they call him the resident someone, of African Union, who is now residing in the Libya. That mission has been upgraded to a fully diplomatic mission and has been empowered. Because during that meeting, it was also agreed that they form the joint chief mission, the chiefs of the 5 regions, to go to Libya and do a fact-finding mission on what exactly that can be done. But now, you also need to understand the African Union. If African Union is to do that, if they are to have peace in Libya, for example, I'm looking at only one conflict area because we have other areas. We have Somalia, we have even Congo. So last time when people were throwing chairs at one another.
In Parliament.
Yes.
South Sudan as well.
Yeah, South Sudan and Ethiopia. But if African Union is to do anything on this conflicts, talking specifically about Libya, that you need to bring on board the unfortunately, the non-African participants. And that is a bit irritating. You are trying to clean up your house, but then you have to call a neighbor to come
and help you.
So I think the relevance of Africa now comes in that we need to have stronger structures. And we cannot have stronger structures. Now imagine, because the other problem that also comes up is how is, for example, talking about the current situation, how is President Tshisekedi, who is now the chairman of the African Union, going to solve issues of Libya
when he has problems?
A bigger problem, actually, back at home. These are some of the problems. And you remember when before Ramaphosa came on the seat as South Africa for the African Union chair, it had been Egypt. But exactly. Now Egypt and Libya have already conflicts. You couldn't expect that.
So you have a problem in Libya,
yes,
where you do not know what is actually happening.
Exactly.
And you have Fatah as
who is an interested party in the conflict in Libya. So these are some of the problems. But at the same time, even when you bring in Ramaphosa, you remember that during of course they first deposed Gaddafi, and then they had to seek a UN resolution for his removal from power. Ramaphosa, South Africa actually, was one of those who voted for the removal of Gaddafi. So these are some of the dynamics that are affecting us.
And that's the question that everybody seeks an answer for. Is the African Union of any relevance to the continent itself? Because we have African problems, which at times may not even have started by ourselves. But then do we have these African solutions? For example, when you look at the formation of the European Union, when they met in, I think it was in November 1993 in the Netherlands. In 1993, the Organization of African Unity had actually been here for 30 years, I could say. Now, they could look at that. When EU was actually formed, they looked at it as a new trajectory for Africa. And you only just imagine and wonder now. You will see or notice that when the European Union came together, there are certain things that they agreed upon to actually make their marriages work. And of course, not really having a political government in the Netherlands or in the UK or anywhere. They're even having problems alone, but they're still trying to manage other issues. And of course, looking at us and looking to them in a way. What do you think is still failing us as a continent? That we have so many of these problems, and I just look at these things as factors. That let's talk about the vision bearer. Now, the vision bearer of the 1963 OAU had problems and went. We now talk about the vision bearer of the 1999 AU also having problems and went. And of course, over the time, we've had new leaders on the continent, new leaders who come on, and we do not know whether these leaders have actually captured that particular AU dream. In 2013, when we're celebrating 50 years of the Organization of African Unity, we launched what we call the African Dream. At that time, I think our commissioner there was Dr. Dlamini Zuma. Yes, Dr. Dlamini Zuma. Now, we have an African Dream that we launched in 1963, projecting and imagining and seeing where do we want to see Africa in another 50 years. Where will this, at 100 years, where shall we be? And just looking at all these dynamics play out and a number of things, are we finding African solutions to our own African problems? Where? like Mututa has actually cited, you have leaders who also have interest or even have problems. You have now a President Felix Tshisekedi who has problems back at home, but is also going to manage a union of so many other problems. You have a problem in Somalia, you have a problem in Djibouti, you have a problem in Libya, you have a problem ridden on the whole continent. So are we just there for formality, or we think that this can actually provide a solution to us?
I just want to say that when you look at Nkrumah in the 60s, his slogan was "Seek first the political kingdom, and the rest will follow." And I think really that is the way to go. That once we get our politics right as a continent, the rest will follow. What is very sad is that in almost the 55 countries that form the AU, they have democratic deficits. So it becomes, when it comes to the issues of good governance and perhaps good politics, that is something that is actually still a challenge on the continent. But again, in terms of structuring, AU has the best structures because you have a parliament, that in which a Pan-African parliament. Actually, the first president of that parliament was an East African, Dr. Gertrude Mongella from Tanzania. You also have a secretariat headed by the chairperson of the AU Commission. Actually, now it is not the Secretary General as it used to be during Salim Hadi Salim's time. We have now headed by a commission, chairperson of the commission. He has, the commission has deputies. You have commissioners. You have a number of agencies spread around the...
We even have what we call the panel of the wise, where Dr. Wandia Specials sits. She's actually one of the members of the panel of the wise.
In terms of structures, we have the structures. Then equally important, also AU has devised means of working with regional blocks. For example, you see when there was a conflict in South Africa, they would say, look, I think SADC, you can handle this. When the conflict in East Africa, they say, I think Uganda, East Africa, you can handle this. The other time when Gambia had issues, they said, I think ECOWAS. So I think in terms of structuring...
And that actually was shown in Senegal.
Yes. So now, what remains to be seen is the commitment. How are we, as a continent, how are our leaders, to what extent are they committed to the African dream? Because now, you have presidents at times who are not even Pan-Africans.
But you see, that's the biggest issue now. We have the regional blocks, like you're saying, and we're struggling to actually make our regional blocks work. We're struggling with the integration of East Africa. We're still not finding so many things right. We move a few steps ahead, we move a few steps backwards again. We try to harmonize on this. Then the other day you will hear Ugandans say, but you see, we came into a common market. Now what's happening to our sugar? You know, and I think the meeting is just coming on sometime at the end of this month, where we'll now actually help harmonize the sugar problem also with our neighbors in Kenya, the sugarcane problem with our neighbors in Kenya. But you see, you talk about you move 2 steps forward, then again 2 steps backward. In other words, we are almost oscillating at the same pace. Now, with the regional blocks that are not yet providing good solutions, but we also have, you talked about the democratic deficits, that you have a country like Ghana, for example, and you have a president who is supposed to not go beyond 8 years. You know, and all the other countries, we have countries, I think, that have majority of us actually on 5 years. Some are suggesting 7 years, and quite a number of the things. And we are trying to find contribution of the different players, just like you said. When we talk about the African Union, we're not seeing something that is actually somewhere that it is very, but we talk about our own selves, presidents. But then we also have this, the democratic deficit that you're saying. Today or 5 years later, you have this country bring this president, then the other day he's out and another comes in, and you want to find their contribution to the union itself because of the way we manage our issues. Talking about the democracy, the democratic deficit itself, did you think the democracy on the continent can actually help us achieve the bigger dream of the African Union?
No, first of all, I think when it comes to democracy, compared to other blocks, for example, African Union is also related in information to the European Union. But looking at that, when you look at the formation of the European Union, you know, they have a parliament, they have the commissioners, then they have the executive council. But these councils are very strong. For example, I was checking the other time that the European Union Parliament is a very strong body. It is completely, and the mandate for legislation is with the parliament. You don't take another decision without parliament approval, which is different from the African Union. You rarely hear of the African Union, the Pan-African
Parliament actually come out to say anything. We are now discussing resolutions of the European Parliament about Uganda, Rwanda, and the other countries. Yes. But we don't hear the Pan-African Parliament actually sitting close to look into the issues of
For example, we know that the rest of the world is depending on Africa in many aspects. They are taking minerals, they are even taking food. We are losing our people. Can't the African Union Parliament, the Pan-African Parliament, also sit down and impose sanctions? Is that difficult? Can we throw it back? Yes.
Talking about brutality itself. Yes. When you watch the news, especially on these international scenes, you'll notice that I think it was recently in France where they passed a law that journalists actually not allowed to even film police officers doing their work,
doing their shit. Like I want to say it, sorry.
Exactly. You know. And can we look at that and say, no, but you see, yes, we have problems back home. But that's our problem.
That's a problem.
You have also problems.
I just want to maybe say this, that...
disagree with him on that?
No, I'm not disagreeing with him, but maybe I'm just shedding more light. That the problem actually the continent is having are the politicians. Because every other time, Jagenda and Akol wish to dislodge a sitting government or a party that is in power, you run to the West. We don't even run to our fellow African countries to mobilize. We run to the West. And that's why you see that now the matters of Uganda are discussed in the European Parliament than in the Pan-African Parliament.
So because nobody talks about Uganda's affairs.
Because now that is the issue. But also, again, you remember during colonialism, the days of the colonialists, when by that time actually we depended on the European media until Ben Bella came and said, look here, why should we depend on European media that is actually full of propaganda, that is actually full of dehumanizing the African people, because everything that was coming out from Africa was bad. Then until they said, no, let's come up with a media. So Africans, we should also start believing in our own media houses. We can say, look here, maybe SABC of South Africa is strong. Maybe you can say
all countries have national public broadcasters.
Yes, no, but of course, much as just like in Europe, they have public broadcasters, but you can say BBC, DW. So the same thing in Africa. Maybe we can zero down on 2 or 3. Then the other issue is because we had issues here in the region in East Africa. Because we have 4 pillars of the East African community, but we find that we are stuck with even the monetary union. We actually we are even stuck because the issue was that I think it's supposed to have been about 5 years ago we should have had an East African currency, and some people have argued, why don't we do it like the way the dollar has actually taken root? That we can maybe say in the region, which country has a strong economy?
Yes.
Which country has a strong shilling? Or then we can adopt theirs and say, look here, in the region, you can use your own funds, money, but you can also equally, we can also adopt the other, rather than staggering on that. Now, on the African continent, we can say, look here, which country has a strong currency? Maybe we can say, instead of seeing a dollar being used, actually you go to downtown here in Kampala, businessmen are charging in dollars.
In dollars, yes.
Why don't they use maybe the rand? Why don't they maybe use the rand? So we also, I think there is also that mindset that even the presidents even the leaders are not doing much actually to empower themselves. So that, look here, if so and so Jagenda is stronger in this, why don't we empower him so that perhaps he becomes the face of the continent in that particular field? And I think that is how we are going to get rid of these foreign interventions.
I was talking about the issue of sanctions. If we know, like now people are saying, and I don't know who tells them that Africans want to live in these capitals in the West and the rest of the world. Because Africans, if we change our minds, we still can live in Africa comfortably than living in some of these places where people are dying other than diseases of the weather and the rest. But if we said now, because most of these people and agencies outside Africa that have caused a lot of pain and suffering to the African people and the African continent do so through their proxies. They may not necessarily come here as governments, but they come in terms of projects, of programs. If we said such a company should not operate in Africa, I know they will go unhandedly with some of the leaders who have grown up in their countries, or they have educated, or they have funded to come to power. But if we said you are not going to fly through Uganda to go to Congo to get minerals, you are not going to go there. Because Africa is not a single country. We have a number of other people. So if we said this company is not going to operate in Africa, we can do it. But the problem is that we need the leadership at the top. Like he said, do we have leaders, do we have people who go to this, who the presidents of Africa, do they know what they want? Are they even Pan-Africans anyway, to begin with, like he put it? So that's one thing. But the other thing is also, when you look at the structures, we need to have stronger structures. And people sometimes are not going to advocate for these strong structures at the union when we cannot even have a semblance of same structures back at our home countries. And of course that is why people are saying, maybe let's go small and slowly. We begin with regions, the blocks, the 5 blocks. Then after building that, we can move. But you have also learned from the regional corporations like NEPAD, now all these other agencies that are operating on the continent, and actually are doing better than some of the rest of the world, in either Asia or Europe or America. But we need just to build. We have the African Development Bank. How are we using it? Because to
develop Africa.
Even the Europeans have the European Bank, which is very strong. Any country without the support of the European Bank can collapse. But are we making use of the African Development Bank? Or it is benefiting a few people? Or how best can we improve, work with it? Instead of going to IMF as Africans, we have our interests, we have our cultures. Instead of going for these loans from the IMF and the World Bank, which comes with strings, some of them even against our own values. But because we cannot develop our own, we end up doing that. I know people will say, well, the rest of the world is not going to allow us to do that. And why should they allow us?
Exactly. That is the next thing. That
Yes.
The Americans will not allow, the others will not allow. They will make sure that actually breaks.
Yes.
And of course, they attribute that to one of the reasons why the brain behind the African Union was actually deposed and killed in the manner that he was actually killed.
Yes.
Because they looked at a situation where he's talking about Iran, for example, where you have an African currency, where you have virtually all the things being done to yourselves as we are. Now we are on a continent that virtually has everything that we need to support ourselves, to feed, to eat, to dress, to do all the things. But you notice that even the gun sale itself, records show that the best market for guns is actually the continent of Africa,
Exactly.
where we have so many of these conflicts. And now let me just come to the African Union and conflict resolution on the continent itself. Because whenever we go into an election, you'll notice that after an election, in many of these countries, there is always dispute. There is not a single country on the continent where you go through an election and either people choose not to go to court, they choose not to go violent, but they concede and say it was a free and fair process. Nobody accepts that. Even our model democratic country, which is Ghana, where people think maybe Ghana is more sanitized than us, they're also in court. You know, it just doesn't come and then they accept and they shake hands and do all the things. In the region here, we had an election in Tanzania, and then we saw what happened now. We just lost the president, the vice president of Zanzibar, who also actually came as a position of compromise to see how to manage the issues that were in Tanzania. Back in Uganda here, you can actually manage and see what is happening. The former president of Burundi the other day said, no, the process actually was not free and fair at all. But there was an election in May in Burundi, and to them they said, we don't even need an observer. It's our own affair. Yeah. Now, back home in Burundi, they said, we'll manage our own things. Yes. Now, the former president says, no, the Ugandan process was actually fraudulent. It was... But you talk about some other country and backdoor, and these are the issues that we're having. We had an election in Burkina Faso, and you saw what happened. President Kabore back was actually voted, but there are issues here. You don't know whether he's actually the president of the entire country.
Even in Ivory Coast.
In Ivory Coast, exactly. Yes. You know, there are all these problems happening across the country, across the continents. Do we have capacity as African Union to actually do conflict resolution and make sure that we have a stable continent for all this to happen?
I just have a feeling that the capacity would be there. But the problem is that everybody has skeletons in their own cupboard. Yeah, because as Jagend is saying, but look here, this was not right. They are reminding you that you're beating up journalists in your country. As you're saying, you're trying to correct this by the saying, look here, the other time you passed through the window to be sworn in, actually like you were sworn in at midnight. So I think those are some of the challenges, and that's why we have to get back to Kwame Nkrumah's slogan, that seek first the political kingdom. Let's get right our politics. I think that should be, we should emphasize that as a continent, the best way is to get right our politics. And once we get right our politics, then definitely the rest will follow. But also we must not think that the other continents will actually want to see Africa develop. No, because like President Yoweri Museveni has put it, that it's because the black race is a very resistant race. But everywhere these fellas went, they wiped out the indigenous people. And they have really failed on the African continent. And so we should not only stop at having a resistant gene, or our race being resistant, but also we should also resist their influence and come up with an African approach that is going to bring us together. Now, in terms of structures, I think the AU has, I must again echo this, they have structures, because they have a council of ministers. Council of Ministers. And
I think yes, nobody has a problem with these councils, with the structures.
Yeah, the role of the Council of Ministers is to help the process of domesticating what actually the policies that have been passed. But then how many of them do that?
And you see, that's the same point that yes, I think Muruta was talking about here. Yes. Just cascade it to the East African region here, where we also have similar structures, that you have the Council of Ministers, of course you have the summit, you have the Council of Ministers, then you have all these other
you have the structures,
you have the ESC, you have the IALA,
and then you have the commissions.
And you have the commissions, exactly. But you're imagining now, we will have a new cabinet. Maybe in the next 2, 3, 4 months, you know, and the minister of ESC in Uganda, who is now no more, you find another one, and you do not know whether the next minister of ESC will actually be that Pan-Africanist, exactly, or is that person who has that regional integration mind in them.
Or someone looking for
money.
You
have them now. As you're bringing on a Ugandan minister who is now part of the ESC Council of Ministers, then Kenya is getting into an election the other day, and you do not know he's actually going to come, whether he will also come as a political appeasement of sorts or something like that. Then the other day you'll have one coming from Tanzania, and you on this mountain, trying to harmonize and see. Uganda brings on a new minister called Mututa, Kenya brings on a new minister called Akol, Tanzania brings on a new minister called Semakula. And we even do not know whether you're Pan-African, so whatever that is.
Even whether you even understand the vision.
Whether you even understand the vision of the integration itself. Now you have a structure, yes. But then how effective are the structures?
In the details, yeah.
In detail.
Because talking again about that, you realize that we may have all these structures, but like for me, I would have been comfortable that when we have a chairman, like now President Tshisekedi has been elected the chairman of the African Union, he takes until his term back at home expires, then another person comes in.
President of the country, he is also chairperson
of this. Until that time, when his time expires, then we shall have another person. But you are having a person 1 year, and during that 1 year, I think they are supposed to meet twice. Of course, one would say this is just the management body. Then the other, the secretariat is working, and you are assuming. But like he's putting it, we have all these structures, but how relevant? They may be relevant, but how operational are these structures working? But at the same time, like we were saying, why can't the African Union take charge of issues? If you know your children are fighting at home, you say, then you begin allowing a neighbor to give this one a stick and they gives another one a stone. I want to end that conflict in the home. You will not. Who is supplying arms in Libya? Because we see tanks with all the types of APCs.
That are not manufactured in Libya.
Yes, they are not manufactured in Africa. Where are these guns coming from? Can we stop this from happening on our continent? Yes, we can. But to be able to do that, we need to provide a cell-level program to the warring factions in Libya. We get Hatifa and his group after, and his group said, man, what is the problem? We need to do this. We get the Islamists, because other than the one recognized by the UN, there's a government in Libya, but it's recognized by the UN. So can we have our own issues and then we intervene? Can we have a standby force for the AU, that when there's a conflict in Congo, when there's a conflict in Uganda, when there's a conflict in Kenya, the standby force of the African Union will come in, other than the UN, because we have seen the weaknesses and the problems that the UN has also caused on the African continent. Part of our problems is actually, like we said last time, is the UN. So can we stop this proliferation of guns flowing into the continent? We can, but to be able to do that, we need to have working structures, like you said. Without that, we can't. And if we leave it to the respective countries, then we are losing our relevance as the African Union and the African continent and the African spirit, the brotherhood we are talking about. So this is the thing. We now need to look at the African Union as a government. And if we did that and we integrated further upwards, these issues of conflicts down here will stop, because there will be a big brother, a big father somewhere, or a big mother somewhere
who has oversight,
who has oversight over the smaller ones. But as long as we continue being micro in our issues, then we are not going to be able to move further to promote a solution. But at the same time, do we as Africans under the African Union have common interests? And what are those common interests? And these are the issues that we need to articulate at the African Parliament. What does the African Parliament want us to achieve? For example, we're now having the issues of COVID. And Africans are saying, how safe are these vaccines? It's a question, quietly. Maybe it's not, many people are not talking about it. But from day one, we have talked about the safety of vaccines for the African population. We have had some of our friends out there who have not wished Africa. You remember how they introduced syphilis, how they introduced AIDS in South Africa, how they have been doing all of this for the Africans. Our CDCs, do we have capacity that whichever medicine that comes in this place is checked for efficacy and safety. I mean, for me, this...
Can we do without them and choose to go the African way? When President Rajolina the other day said, I have the COVID vaccine, then of course, you know, he was bashed and done all the things.
Yes.
So then a few colleagues, Magufuli here says, I'll run to you, give me 1 million bottles of those, and something like that. Why would actually say that, okay, yes, we do not know much about the COVID drug or vaccine in Madagascar from Rajolina, but let's give it a try.
Yeah, let's have it at our CDC.
Exactly.
Yes.
Then you said the African CDC. I'm worried our time is running out, but just summarize it in 1.5 minutes.
My take on that is that Africans, we should start believing in ourselves. Yes, we should start. Of course, we can't be uniform, but we should harmonize our programs. Secondly, because like I've always asked questions whenever I participate in issues of the East African community and also African Union, you find that when they are paying people, you're paid in dollars. I was like, now, why don't we use the Kenyan currency for East African community? And for the case of now the ACLAN, which is under the African Union, based in Bamako, why don't we use at least the Naira? But you find that people are being paid in dollars. And so that means that...
Yeah, because you have a passport to go to South Africa.
So we should learn to believe in... We should believe in ourselves, start small and grow bigger. We should start somewhere. We should not be the ones to glorify the American dollar.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, I'd thank you so much for having allowed to get into this discussion this morning on the relevance of the African Union. And, well, if nothing much happens, I would allow that maybe we can still continue with the discussion on the African Union, look at quite a number of things, and, of course, more engagement in our discussions every Friday on the Pan-African Friday. Thanking you so much, especially those who follow us on UBC TV, Uganda, GME Extra, every morning, especially when we talk about these continental issues that concern us as Pan-Africans. My name is Uganda Semakola Ziksok on behalf of the team, wishing you a very blessed weekend and a very good day today for God and my country. Stay blessed as we continue inspiring Uganda. Good morning.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra.